Let's do a bit of knitting. I'm still using this chocolate brown. Wait, I think I need to get closer. Hold on. My yarn all mixed up. Mixed up. Okay, let's watch something.
When I go to make a YouTube video, I tend to ask myself, if I was hanging out with a friend right now, what would I want to talk about? And right now, what I really want to talk about is Pinterest. And I was like, how can that be a video? And I'm like, you know what? It just can be. If people want to watch it, they can. And if they don't have to. I really want to talk about Pinterest and sharing, well, not talking about Pinterest specifically as a platform. There are some really good video essays about the complications of Pinterest if you're interested in that. We're going to look at my knitting and crochet inspiration on Pinterest. I would love for you, based on what
Hi,
you're seeing,
Shaitika.
if you can think of any
Hello.
recommendations for people I should be following or other sources of inspiration you think I would like, or just recommendations for projects, techniques, or even patterns based on what you're seeing in the style coming through. I welcome that, please, thank you. And before diving into all of this, I also want to show people how to do a reverse image search, because there are going to be a lot of patterns and really interesting things that pop up as we talk about things, but I cannot possibly link all of this stuff in the description, and it would just get lost in the sauce anyways. So if you are not familiar, you can do something called a reverse image search, and for people that don't know how to do it, this is for you. If you do know how to do it, skip ahead, you're good. So if at any point you're like, ooh, that looks interesting, I wonder if that's a pattern,
Romchik.
what you're
Hello.
gonna do is you're
Hi.
going to pause the video, and then you're going to take a screenshot of whatever
Hello.
it is that you're interested in. And because I'm currently using my screenshot tool to record the screen right now, I can't do that, but I already have one saved, so I can still show you. But screenshot whatever it
Hello.
is that you're interested in, and then go to Google, and then you're going to click on this button here, which is search by image, so you can do what's called a reverse image search. So you have the option to upload a file, so I'm going to go ahead
Hi,
and drag and drop
Shaitika.
the image that I was
Unfortunately,
interested
hold
in
on.
based on the video.
Hi, Shaitika. How are you? I was alive on YouTube live a lot today because I wanna finish this sweater, but also I kind of lost my voice, and tomorrow I'm working and I'm taking a lot of medication just to make sure that tomorrow I'm fresh. I have a lovely voice, and this is why today has been more of a silent. I have been a silent creator. Is it correct? But I'm still working on this sweater. I'm doing the second sleeve now. So that's fun. What are you working on? I'll put you back and I'll just check. I'll check in from time to time, but please don't get upset if I don't see the messages. You're quite behind me. Hi. Hello. So if I don't see your messages immediately, please don't get upset. I'm really trying to make this video, make this sweater sleeve a reality today. I don't want to work on it tomorrow, so I'm I'm actually forcing myself to finish it today. I did this sleeve 6 times. I tried different types of decreases, and ultimately this is what I managed to do. And I don't know if you can tell, but the decreases are visible, and I'm hoping that after blocking this will change. And I have to go back and redo this part. I need to make it longer, so not even this is finished. And also when my, or maybe I can leave it actually. No, I need it longer. So I'm gonna have to go in and redo it, and hopefully like eliminate this part and this part. I'm gonna have to do this final decrease not so late, but I'm gonna have to do it when the color switches, because with the, if I leave it here, it's way too visible. I don't know if you can see it, but I see it here, here. I don't like it. So lots of work, actually, so much work. Okay, let's see if I can listen to something interesting while I knit, so that I can get in the groove of things, so that I can get in the rhythm. But thank you for coming by, and bye.
And it's gonna pull up a whole bunch of links, and basically I'm gonna look for Ravelry or Etsy or a personal website oftentimes, but I would start by looking at Ravelry or Etsy because it's probably your best bet. So in this case, it's Etsy, and it takes you right to the pattern. Not everything I'm going to show is going to be a pattern. In fact, a lot of the stuff isn't, but this will help you out if you find something that you're interested in. Okay, with that being said, let's go to Pinterest. Okay, my Pinterest is not super organized, so I just have a big crafts board and then a couple different subsections. So all of my knitting and crocheting information goes into the same board because a lot of it has overlapping inspiration. I don't know about you. I feel bad. Like, I don't want to directly copy stuff, but like, look at how cute this is. Oh my gosh. Duplicate stitch that. Okay, I pinned this pair of mittens because I like that they're two different motifs, one on each mitten. I don't know why I haven't thought about doing that, but I'm so indecisive, so this would be a really interesting way for me to be able to do like two things that I want to do in one project. Although I'm indecisive enough as is, so do I really need more options? We're just gonna be bouncing all over the place, by the way. One thing that I've been really into lately is looking at embroidery on knitting. From a process perspective, I am not a huge fan of embroidery. I don't feel like I'm very good at it, and it takes a very long time. But I love how it looks, so I kind of want to try to maybe do it a little bit, especially to spice up some pretty like basic projects that I'm working on. Because sometimes I just want to make a stockinette pair of mittens and not put a lot of effort into it, and then maybe later come back to it and add some like really cute embroidery. I have a ton of granny square stuff pinned, by the way, because I just got done with my video where I did this granny square vest, and I could not get enough inspiration because I was so indecisive. So there's a lot of granny square stuff on here. Okay, this is really cute. Is this a pattern? No, it's not. Okay, they're just selling it. That's really cute.
Хотел скидки? Они уже ждут тебя в Дарвин! Скидки до 50% и кредит 0% на Black Friday! Выбери Poco X6 Pro с памятью 512 гигабайт за 6199 леев. Или наушники Marshall Maker 4 всего за 1999 леев. Только до 1 декабря в Дарвин!
This is my board, so I'm gonna say that about everything. I don't know when I'm gonna suck it up and finally do like a really interesting duplicate stitch project because oh my gosh, there's so many. And I don't know why, but anytime I see duplicate stitch or just like a motif or image of fish on a knit piece, instantly it's going on my Pinterest. I also want to do color changing like this, but who has the scraps? Who has the scraps for that? I don't. I don't have that many interesting colors. Maybe I should start saving up. Okay, I don't know if I would ever make something like this, but sculptural knitting and sculptural crochet is so fascinating to me. I really want to look into specific artists and seeing who's out there. I certainly could not afford. This is probably selling for like $2,000. Maybe more. It's not showing me. That's right. I don't need to know what I can't afford. But like, look at how cool that is. I doubt that's hand knit though. That's got to be made on a machine, right? Like, there's no way. Okay, what do we think about this? From like a structural perspective, what are our thoughts? Oh my gosh, I need to look at this. Okay, so I started knitting a sweater using some scrap yarn I have on hand, and I was so into it, and I got really far. Like, I finished the body, and all I had left to do was the sleeves, but I'm not feeling that into it anymore because I tried to do jogless striping, which is very difficult to do when I just did one row stripes. And I love the visual impact of that aesthetically, and I didn't want to stray and do more than one row, like maybe do 2 rows like this. But the jogless stripe method that I used for one row stripes is it just creates this weird line around the back that I could try and finagle it to make it look a little bit more hidden, but I don't love it. So I think I should just lean into it and do something like this. So I should really check out this pattern, the glitch sweater, because I don't mind that. Like if you, I think there's some interior design advice where it's like if you can't hide it, make it a feature, and this is definitely a solid example of that. I keep pinning basket weave sweaters. I still have yet to do one. I'll get to it eventually, I swear. Okay, where would I wear it? I don't have the confidence, but avant-garde knitting is my favorite thing. I could look at images like this all day long. It's so cool, especially because you don't have to knit the whole base sweater if you don't want to. You can just knit the pieces, like, and stick them on. Okay, real quick. I know it's not knitting or crochet, but look at that woman's skirt. Look at her skirt. Look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah, see what I mean? Avant-garde. I love the avant-garde style, but I just don't prioritize it when I go to make stuff, which needs to change. Okay, I saw this top from We Are Knitters, and let's see if they have more of this. No, they don't. I love this top. It is so cute. I know I have images further down of it as well from the front. It's so cute, but it kind of looks like it wouldn't be all that comfortable for me. I don't know. Could I do a knit version? I like it with crochet. I like that texture, but I'm so scared of doing this. Probably this looks like double crochet, and I'm so scared of doing a double crochet project because I'm so worried about it being like stiff and overly thick. Okay, I have a question. This one, I don't know. I don't know about it. It's opening up a lot of questions in my head. So I want to ask all the parents out there, what do you think of this? Do you find that would be practical at all? Do you think you would use it more than once a year? Because I could see it being interesting if you're like going to a winter festival outside and you're worried like your kid's gonna stray away from you, just having a rule with them of like keep your hand in the mitten and we'll hold hands and walk our way through it as a way to have like a leash kid but maybe a little bit more voluntary than a leash kid. I don't know. But the other thing is this could be a little pocket for hand warmers. You just stick your little hand warmer in there. Yeah, would you use this at all? I'm pretty sure you could also do this with like 2 adult hands if you're in that loving of a relationship, if you just love holding hands. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Okay, going back. Okay, isn't this cute? How cute is this? You have the, I think it's seed stitch, it might not be, with the duplicate stitch chickens on the other side, so it's like they're eating up all the stuff. and they're like cleaning up their little section. How adorable is that? Okay, I did pin this. I want it for myself, not for a child. I want to wear a crown on my head. And you know what, confession? I watched Riverdale when it came out. I only made it, I think, 3 or 4 seasons in before I stopped watching, but I really liked the first season, and I was still into it the second season, and I'm pretty sure by season 3 they kind of lost me, but I only say that because it looks like Jughead's hat, his knit hat. Can you tell I have a thing for scrappy looking scrunchies? I have a hard time with scrunchies. I love them. I love wearing them, and I want like a billion hand knit scrunchies in my life. But I have such a hard time sitting down and being like, we're knitting a scrunchie. We're casting it on. We're doing it. Ooh, I forgot about this one. Okay, I should actually make these for coat hangers for a closet because they like slip off and fall down all the time. In my closet, for my stuff, I like to use the felt hangers. I use that for everything. I have such a pet peeve about things falling off. I would rather take an extra second to take it off the hanger than have to deal with stuff falling on the floor all the time. I love freeform crochet. I love looking at it, and I think I'm just waiting to collect enough scrap yarn in order to actually make a freeform crochet sweater. But like, they're all so fun, and you just get to mess around with it and play. That's the thing. Ooh, I like that. I also like this. I like all of this. Um, I don't remember what I was saying, so clearly it did not matter. Oh yeah, I pin a lot of like pixel art or cross stitch patterns so that I could potentially make a knitting pattern with that image on it or duplicate stitch because I kind of want to buy, because like, okay, here's the deal with knitting. I do not like doing projects that are smaller than 2.75 millimeter needles, and anything smaller than a 3.75, I still have a hard time signing up for if I'm doing a sweater. But I like the idea of like buying or thrifting, like a machine knit, a store-bought machine knit, smaller gauge sweater, and then spending a lot of time doing a cross stitch or duplicate stitch pattern on top of it. Like, there's just so many ideas, and I think I would have such a hard time picking. Okay, look at these. Aren't they fun? That's so funny. I should make these. I really should make these. Do I have any black yarn? I don't think I do. I don't knit black stuff all that often. No, I do. I definitely do. Oh my gosh. Yes, I have some. This will be perfect. I have some Drops Daisy, and I think I have some Drops Daisy in black and in cream. I could totally make those. That's the worst thing about crafting and doing a slow craft is like you want to make all the things, but each thing takes like a month to make. It's hard to pick. Yeah, I want to get into different crochet stitch types and doing, like, there's so many cool things you can do with crochet, and I have barely even dipped my toes in. Look at that. Isn't that cool? That's so cool. I feel like we're going to start seeing fantasy and Renaissance fashion become a little bit more popular. It's been doing it a little bit with cottagecore, but I think it's going to ease into more fantasy-based stuff, and so I think we're going to see more clothing items and patterns coming out that look or follow that sort of vibe, and I think this outfit and that sweater really fits in that vibe. I'm totally gonna make a chunky scarf. When I first learned how to knit, I was in 5th grade and I took an after school class on knitting, which was so awesome. Thank you, Mom, for signing me up for that. And basically, at the time when you were a beginner, at least when I was, all I really knew how to do was scarves, and that's all I really thought there was. Like, maybe people do hats as well, but I'd only seen the hats where you basically do a rectangle or a tube and then you like cinch it up at the top. I didn't know how to decrease. So since learning how to knit over the past 10 years, I just haven't wanted to look at scarves or touch scarves. So the closest I've gotten to it is making a Sophie scarf, which I don't count because I do not wear that as a scarf. I wear it as a headband or I tie it in a bow on my purse. But I am like, maybe there's a lot of cute scarves out there, and I really don't have any scarves in my closet. So I'm wanting to. So I think I'm gonna start with something chunky and go from there because that's a good opportunity for me to have a chunkier knit item. There's not a lot of times where I want a chunky knit, but that would be good because scarves, I feel like they're deceptively large, and I feel like I'm gonna make one and be like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. I pinned this just to be like, how talented. I'm never gonna make that, but I want it. Some people are so talented. Okay, so from doing this sweater vest, I have some leftover granny squares, And I'm kind of debating making something inspired by this Free People sweater where I do the top half. It's not gonna look exactly like this, but doing the top half and sleeves as knitting and then just having the body portion be granny squares. That could be cool. That could be cool for people that want to do like a combination of the two projects. And I love when you combine knitting and crochet. They both just elevate each other so much. I feel like knitting makes crochet look a little bit more polished, like in the case of my knitting edges on this granny square vest. And then I feel like crochet makes knitting more fun. They just influence each other in the best way. That dress is cute, but I would never wear it because I'm not confident. I don't think I'm gonna make this vest, even though it is so freaking cute. But I do want to self draft a cabled like sweater vest because I think I have some like cherry red cotton merino yarn, and I think that would be a really cute way to do that because self drafting with cables is so easy and so fun. Like it's challenging, but it's a fun challenge. I'm also really into cotton cabling. I don't know if this is made of cotton, but it gave me that vibe of like high stitch definition, and it just is so fun. It's made casual. Like I like when you combine also cabling with a rolled hem because cabling can look very sophisticated in my mind at least, and then the rolled hem makes it more casual and just styled like this. It's so beachy summer. Adore it because this is the kind of thing like an oversized cotton or cotton merino blend sweater with cables. I wear it all the time as like pajamas. This dress is really cute. Also, Aurora, love her. The Seed is like my favorite song of all time. And so I loved this music video in collaboration that she did with, is it Jacob Collier? I do not know how to say his last name. I'm sorry. Little hair in my tea. Thank you, Pippin, for sharing your hair with me. But Aurora wore this. This isn't a good picture of it. Yeah, here's a better picture. I think it's called the Bolero, which is a fairly, I would say that's a bulky weight yarn, and it wouldn't take too long to make. It's so cute. Oh my gosh. I love it. I kind of want to make a bolero, but I'm scared. And then those mittens, they're so cute. She's a fashion icon. Ooh, if you haven't heard of them before, there's this company, the Boston, what is it? Yeah, Boston Fiber Company, and they do something called doodle decks, where they give you like color work motifs, and they do them in themes. So this is their Halloween deck, and I just thought that that's such a cute idea. That's such a cute idea because you can apply those to anything. And for anyone wanting to self draft their own color work, I'm gonna do that soon. I highly recommend everyone give it a try because it's just fun. I would recommend maybe trying to follow a pattern if you're going to do stranded color work or doing a stranded color work project before diving into making your own. Okay, is that not cute? Is that not so cute? Also, I love these pockets, these exposed pockets on the front. Oh, that's really cute. I'm getting distracted. All right, let's talk about ponchos. Let's talk about them because they're going to pop up. I I had a poncho when I was a kid, but I loved it. And they weren't cute. I never got complimented on it, I don't think. And I don't think they were very in. They were definitely very out at a certain point in my teenage years where you would not be caught dead in a poncho. But I think they're going to start coming back slowly. And we're starting to see that a little bit. So I'm looking. This one I would not make only because it would take me forever. But there's some shorter ponchos that I would consider making again because I go on walks all the time. And I live in a climate where it's about 16 degrees Celsius throughout the winter. Like, I guess I don't know Celsius all that well, but I think it's between 14 and 16 degrees Celsius. And for the Americans, it's like 40 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the entire winter. It's so nice. As someone that grew up in a colder climate where it's like -10 throughout the winter, it's so nice. And I haven't had to wear a winter, like I'll go a whole winter without even touching my winter jacket. So I kind of want to play around with outerwear, with knitting and crochet. So I'll get to a poncho eventually. Okay, I really want to do a double crochet sweater at some point in time, and I'm leaning towards having it be scrappier, but I'm so scared of doing it and having it be really stiff and thick. I'm worried it's gonna be really stiff, so if I did that, I think I would, or did this, then I would have to find a really drapey yarn to do it with. So if you have any really drapey yarn recommendations, hit me up. I have a couple pins that kind of fall in this arena of using multiple strands of yarn to, I don't even know if this is hand knit, but using multiple strands of yarn to create this really, really interesting color look. Sorry, we had a stray cat on our balcony the other day, and I have this like blurring film, so anytime I sense motion, my eyes instantly are like, is the stray cat back? I hope so, they're so cute. Yeah, but I also don't really wear a lot of bulky knits all that often, so I don't really know how I would go about doing this. I'd have to get some really thin yarn in a lot of different colors, so that could get expensive real fast. I already made something like this. I really like it. I use it all the time, so I could really go for making another one. Although it took forever. I was surprised by how long it took. Halibut sweater, just in different color combos than I did, but I love this color combo for the halibut sweater. Me and my husband had matching black halibut sweaters with white contrast color, and then made a matching one for our cats. This is a fun way to use scrap yarn. If you have different amounts, I really hope that, I think I'm starting to see a trend of mismatched socks like coming through in the knitting world, and I'm really into them, especially when they have like a little something in common, like this little stripe in the middle here. See what I mean about the multiple strands and the like quick color changing? This is obviously store-bought, but look at this. Is this, I think it's selling the actual product. Yeah, it's not a pattern. But I love the picot edge because there's a couple different ways to go about doing knit scrunchies, and the first time I did it, I had a really big seam and I didn't like the look of it, and so I like didn't really want to lean into doing it, and whatever. But I like that they did a crochet, I think it's crochet picot edge, maybe it's knit, that makes that seam a feature. Again, if you can't hide it, make it a feature. I kind of want to try a bonnet. I think I'm going to try and do that soon. I don't know if I would hate myself in a bonnet though, because it feels like something that's meant for children. Like for some reason, balaclavas, they just look like a knit hoodie to me. So I can get behind that a little bit more, but knit bonnets, I have a harder time with knowing how I would style it. That one looked like handmaids too. It was cute. Okay, look at this. I want to do this for sure. This is definitely, yeah, the hope slip over. Using cabling on the edges. That's genius. I've seen that in a couple different patterns before. Beautiful. And then this is so simple and delicate, and I should do this. I'm gonna say that about everything. There's a reason these are all pinned on my Pinterest. Look at it. It's so cute. Is it not so cute? Just a little I-cord bow sewn on. So simple. These are so cute. Oh my gosh. Scandinavian folk is very in right now in the world of interior design, and we're gonna see that spreading over into knitting and crochet. We already are, but more so. I want to do a pair of knit socks that replicate this, because this is such a cool pattern. Like, these are not knit socks, these are just, it's advertising for the shoe, which is such a cute shoe. This whole outfit, digging it, but yeah, I want to do this in a knit sock. Okay, this was that crochet top that I was talking about the other day. It's so cute, but I just worry that it would be too stiff for me. I don't know. Look at that sleeve. Look at that sleeve. That's gorgeous. Yeah, tapestry crochet. So cute, but I just worry that it would be too stiff for me. I don't know. Look at that sleeve. Look at that sleeve. That's gorgeous.
Descoperă o lume a frumuseții fără limite, o selecție unică de produse cosmetice, parfumuri, produse cosmetice.
Синопред – немецкий фитопрепарат против синусита. Синопред экстракт – концентрированная форма с усиленным действием.
Did I get it done on
time. I don't have enough yarn. I don't have enough time. I was over it. No one factored that in. Taylor Swift didn't factor it in. Allison didn't factor it in. Thank you for creating this space where we can make a difference like that. Like, we just changed the system of sizing for a designer. And that is insane to me. Let this be a reminder to not stress yourself out over gift knitting this holiday season. You just don't have to do that to yourself. So allow me to give you permission to not.
Hey, Laura, and this is also known as Laura.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast episode today. This one feels, it's not, there's nothing special other than the fact that I have been working on a serious deadline, and I am here to share the fruits of my labor with you today. I have a finished object. I have one whip that I had worked on a little bit over the week, and I think we will go ahead and try on today. I also wanted to let you know about a test knit that I had finished recently, and the pattern is coming out soon. But more than that, I have a little something special for you to potentially win. So I'll talk about that probably more at the end, and I'll share with you what I'm wearing. So why don't we go ahead and start there? This is my So Frill blouse, lovingly called my Thanksgiving vest. I knit this up right down to the wire last year for Thanksgiving, and I figured this is actually the last podcast you will see before Thanksgiving, so I figured maybe I'm hanging out with you cooking or something in your kitchen, and I thought I'd bring a little bit of festive energy to the scene today. So that is what this is. It's a very heavily modified version of the So Frill blouse by Nadine Joer-Favel, and basically she has this design where it has basically everything that you see, everything that you're seeing looks like what her blouse looks like, but then there's the addition of a second ruffle on the sleeves, as well as actual long sleeves, which are made up of this, I think it's a faux cable, that it looks like ribbing from afar, but it's actually a cable that's running down the sleeves. And then her version is actually supposed to have almost a little bit of negative ease that kind of brings in the waist almost a little bit corset-like, and again in that cabling, which from afar does kind of look just like ribbing. So the changes that I had made were, first of all, I knit mine as a vest. I omitted the sleeves. I'm not the first person to have done that, but that was the look I was going for. I had planned to do the double ruffle, but knitting down to the wire last year, I did not realize how long a single ruffle would take, because you're basically just increasing stitches, and then you have this wild amount of stitches on your needle for the little ruffle. So I only wound up doing the one, and to be honest, I really loved that. The other thing that I had done was I did not do any of those kind of cables or faux cables, and I just did a few inches of ribbing at the bottom. It looks like I did a twisted rib. I don't know if that's totally accurate, but looks like that's what I had done here. And in doing that, I also included a split hem, so that the back is just a pinch longer than the front is, I think. And it's just like this kind of cropped little vest. Now, I knit mine out of one of my best thrift finds ever. This was it was the Alpaca Company. I think it's Alpaca Co. Their sock. Oh boy, it was a hand-dyed yarn in the colorway Harvest. I think it was alpaca. You know what? There's a Ravelry page where I tell you all about it, but it is this hand-dyed yarn, and these obviously very fall festive colors, which is what screamed so Thanksgiving to me. But my whole thing was that, like, looking at it, I actually found it to be kind of an ugly color, if I'm being so honest. But I had found the yarn, thrifted it for $1 a skein, and I had 3 skeins of it that I was just determined to knit up into some sort of garment for Thanksgiving because it just looked so perfect for that. But I really felt like the green and the orange were just they were competing so much. The orange is like a bright orange, and I really wanted to tone it down. So I wound up holding that yarn together with a single strand of Drops Kid mohair in their chocolate colorway. So it was a brown mohair that I held together with the Harvest yarn, and that really did help to just kind of chill out that orange enough and kind of muddle it all together. Now, the other really big challenge that I had with this one was that it was a hand-dyed yarn, and it's also that very heavily variegated yarn. So I was trying to avoid any pooling, and I went to such great lengths to make sure that I was not going to get any sort of weird demarcation, pooling, none of that. I did a combination of helical knitting as well as knitting flat, which you start out knitting flat because you're knitting this really fantastic little button placket and stuff. I was alternating skeins each row. I mean, there was just a lot of really, like, lots of thought and intention went into this seemingly kind of simple little garment. So I don't know that I'm going to wear, I still don't know what I'm wearing for Thanksgiving yet. I thought maybe I would try this on today to see if I'm feeling it this year. And I'm still kind of undecided. So yeah, I just thought it would be fun to wear for the festive time. And otherwise, I believe that we should go ahead and dive on in. Let me go ahead and start with my finished object, which the big question being, did I get it done on time? If you remember last week's video, I set up a pretty strict timeline to get this project done for my sister. And in that video, I had said that I was going to be gifting it to her on Thursday, as I thought she was leaving on Friday. And so my plan was to, I still have to finish knitting the sleeves on this. Okay, let me just, calm down. It's the Poet's Cardigan by Allison Schmidt. And heavily modified once again, in order to accommodate the size that I was planning to knit this up at for my sister. My sister is going to see the Taylor Swift concert this weekend in Canada, and I don't know what made me believe that she was leaving on Friday, and therefore I thought I had until like Thursday night to get this done for her. Come to find out, she's actually leaving early Thursday morning. So where I thought that I had all of the remainder of the weekend and then up until Thursday night
Fii atent, doar acum ai cel mai performant extractor de nutrienți, originalul Mickey Bullet, cu mega reducere de 60%. Al tău la cel mai mic preț posibil, la doar 999 de lei.
to finish the sleeves, do the ribbing, do the cuffs, hem, button bands, blocking, sewing on buttons. I thought that I had over a full week to get that done, and then I found out that she's actually leaving early Thursday morning. So as I'm filming her today, it is Wednesday, the 20th. My sister leaves tomorrow morning, and right after I wrap up filming here, I am going to meet her to give her her cardigan because it is done, even though I had basically 2 days less than I thought I did. I thought I would have all day today and all day tomorrow to get it done. I'm so relieved. Let me get her up here on Helena the Hanga so that we can just really dive into this one. Here we have it. This is my finished Poet's Cardigan. So quick recap. The pattern is a free pattern by Allison Schmidt based off of the Taylor Swift Portrait Poets Department cardigan. And she knit this up for herself and put a free pattern on Ravelry on just how she made it for herself according to her own measurements. Now, my sister and I are about the same size. We're the same like dress size, but she's a few inches shorter than I am. So and both of us are bigger than Allison. So I was making this cardigan to fit my sister, and therefore I was using Allison's pattern as a guide, and then I was coming up with how I could make it bigger essentially just along the way. So it's knit up in pieces, very similar to the Lion Brand Folklore cardigan, which I really think helped that I had the experience of knitting that up earlier this year for my cousin. And so I was able, I had a good understanding of how this was all going to come together in the end. Now, last week I had literally just finished knitting up the back panel on this. Prior to that, I had knit up the 2 front panels. And then all I had left to do were the sleeves and then all this ribbing that you see. One of the things that I learned after filming last week's video is that the biggest deviation for this pattern versus the folklore cardigan was that this is actually intended to be a drop shoulder, not a set-in sleeve, which I spent a whole portion of last week's podcast talking about how I was going to figure out how to knit the sleeves in that sort of set-in sleeve bell shape that I thought it was going to be. And oh my goodness, my relief when I saw that it's actually a drop shoulder. So the difference being that for the set-in sleeve, you are literally knitting with a sleeve cap, and that's basically the part that goes up over the shoulder. In a typical kind of the shirt I'm wearing today, this would have been done with a set-in sleeve, so an entire sleeve cap is cut into this pattern, whereas for a drop shoulder sweater, the actual body of the sweater is accounting for a bit of the sleeve because that seam, it drops down, the shoulder is dropped. So you don't have to account for all the shaping. It's intended to have a little bit more of a boxy, relaxed fit. And therefore, knitting the sleeves, I totally could have done it by seaming up the whole body and then picking up the sleeves and knitting them in the round down and then working decreases. But I didn't. I just went and I knit them flat anyway. I liked the idea of still being able to just have these two little pieces on the go rather than lugging the whole sweater around. Plus, it kept the momentum going of just knitting the sleeves and not having to sit and seam things yet. So I figured out the numbers for how I would knit my sleeves at a larger size than Allison's, and I did that by the same way I did across everything else. The Allison's pattern is made up of 2 and 4 stitch cables, and mine are made up of 4 and 6 stitch cables. So I made that switch on the sleeves, and that was only in what was a 4 stitch cable, switching it to a 6 stitch cable. Otherwise, I did the flat braid the same way that she did. So that is the same cable that you see on the front of the body here. There's a 4 stitch cable, 4 stitch cable, and then the flat braid. So that was the same on the sleeves where it was the 2 flat braids. What I wound up doing is just adding in sort of like ribbing into the underarm of the sleeve. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it here, but essentially I have like a 2x2 rib situation, and then the edges where they meet, it creates a like 4 stitch kind of column before it then gets into tapering the sleeve. But this was knit from the bottom up. So I started without any of that ribbing. I just had my diamond, the cables that I had figured out. I added a purl stitch in between. So where Allison has in her pattern a single purl stitch between most of her cables, I had 2. This is all just me making an effort to make these, dimensions work for me without losing the look of the original cardigan, without having to overhaul this and completely change it. These were all the little changes I was able to make. So cast on from the bottom again with my provisional cast on over the try-it-on tubing, so that after everything was seamed up, I could just come back and knit all of the ribbing however long I needed to, wanted to. So glad that I did that still. And then just as I worked my way up the sleeves, I was increasing at the rate that she told you to in the pattern, the way that Allison said to. And I just knew that I was adding on a couple of purls and then a couple of knits and then a couple of purls and then a couple of knits instead of what she says to do in her pattern. Now, my goal with this was to kind of make it look a little bit more seamless, that there was like this kind of 4 stitch set of stockinette under the body too. I don't think that totally worked out, but basically what you wind up seeing is that it's like a 2x2 rib under the arm, and then that just disappears. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, I realize that you even lose the last 2. So I thought it was going to look like 4 stitches across. It does only look like 2, because when you seam it up, you do lose those last couple of stitches. So that's good to know for the future too. Now, once I finished knitting, okay, so halfway through knitting the sleeves, I seamed up the shoulder seams, which is done with a mattress stitch. And I decided, I really don't mind doing a mattress stitch. I think I got so much practice doing it with the folklore cardigan that returning to it really did come back to me pretty easily. And it was much quicker than it was the first time I had to do that across a full garment. So I stitched up the shoulder seams, at which point I was able to try this on, kind of like I did last week with the stitch markers, but obviously way more accurately. Then I noticed that because it was going to be a drop shoulder, so that seam was going to fall down a little bit, I really needed to know just how much it was going to fall down the shoulder to determine just how long I needed the sleeves to be. So at that point, I decided that I wasn't going to be able to get a proper before and after blocking shot of this one, because I was going to have to block it kind of as I went from then on.
Историк моды, лектор, писатель Александр Васильев приглашает на светский раут в Кишиневе. Тайны модных домов мира откроются 30 ноября в Дворце Республики. Билеты на сайте Афиша МД. Желающие смогут приобрести книги.
So I steam locked this, which I think you'll be able to tell. I'm sure I'll put in some clips from last week's footage of how it looked when I tried it on before it was blocked, and all of the stitches are so scrunched up, versus how it is now, where this fabric becomes so fluid and so beautiful. This is Lion Brand Wool Ease. I really am a fan of the fabric that you get with a steam lock, and I just did it by laying this out on a towel and literally taking my steam iron and ironing it. I did not take any special precautions. I learned that from doing my cousin's folklore cardigan, that this yarn responds best to steam blocking, and honestly, a wet block on this kind of yarn, on acrylic yarn in general, really doesn't do anything. That's what I learned from my experience with steam blocking it. You can see a huge transformation. So once I had steam blocked it, and now I had the front and back sewn to each other, the sides were open, I was able to try this on. Now, it didn't have any button bands, it didn't have anything like that yet, so I was still kind of eyeballing things. But at that point, when I tried it on and I kind of measured the distance from where that shoulder seam was, where the end of the shoulder, the drop shoulder, was sitting, down to how long I would want the sleeve to be. I can't remember now what measurement I came up with, but I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know that I'm going to be able to finish this, because at that point I had knit up one full diamond on the sleeve, and I thought I was going to knit an entire other full diamond. I started panicking. I don't have enough yarn. I don't have enough time. I was over it. And then I remembered, wait a second, she is shorter than me. And I hadn't thought about it up until then, that would factor in to how I was knitting this garment. So I quickly texted my sister and I said, I need a favor. Can you please grab your favorite sweater, sweatshirt, whatever, lay it out flat on the floor with the arms open wide, and measure from cuff to cuff the wingspan. And it was important that I asked for that measurement and not just can you measure from your shoulder down to where you'd like the sleeve to hit, because it was that drop shoulder element, and on me that shoulder is going to sit so much differently because we are different proportions. I really needed to know from cuff to cuff wingspan, how much distance is that going to need to cover? Because the reality is, if this was knit in like a bat wing style, the sleeve would maybe start here, and so it might even be a 6 to 8 inch sleeve, but it doesn't matter as long as you know the full wingspan. And when you add up from cuff to body down to the cuff again, if those wingspans are still equal, then it should fit her properly, because I knew that our bodies are about the same circumference. So I wasn't concerned about the body at this point. It was just that sleeve length, but I needed to know exactly how much ground we needed to cover. And in that, we discovered that where my favorite sweater from cuff to cuff is 60 inches, my sister's favorite sweater from cuff to cuff was 51 inches. And in fact, first she measured wrong. We wound up FaceTiming so I could show her how to measure it again. The first measurement that she sent me was 47. I was like, that just can't be right. So hers was 51 inches, which just goes to show you that, oh my goodness, thank God I asked her, because I was just like, oh, it'll just have to be a little bit shorter than mine, no big deal. And that makes a really big difference. So when she sent me that 51 inches, I then wound up measuring my body across, which I think wound up being about 25 inches. Whatever it was, I subtracted it from 51 inches. That left me with, let's just use like easy numbers right now. Let's say the goal was 50 inches for the wingspan, and then my body was already taking up 25 inches. That would have left me with 25 inches I had to cover in sleeve length. Now, obviously there's 2 sleeves, so we could divide that by 2, which means that we are now left with 12.5 inch sleeves. I also knew that the ribbing on the cuffs was going to take up at least 1.5 inches. And so I subtracted 1.5 inches from the sleeve length, but also felt like that's why I did my provisional cast on. I left plenty of wiggle room to be able to knit the ribbon either shorter or longer than, whatever I had to do to make things fit properly. At which point I discovered that the diamond and a half was already, it was 13 inches where I needed 12 and a half. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank God. Because I was going to have to knit still an entire other half of this diamond. And these sleeves, the amount of stitches that wind up being on the sleeves, it's actually more than the body, than the back panel of the body. That's a lot of knitting. It was so much to get done. So when I saw that the numbers were adding up, that I was done knitting the cabling on the sleeves, that meant I was done knitting with a chart. That meant I was done knitting with having to count and pay attention, and oh my gosh, it was done. So I called it a night from there. After that, I wound up steaming the sleeves. I did a just standard bind off across the sleeves, and then I was able to use the mattress stitch to seam the sleeves to the cardigan. So I did that by, again, I had only seamed up the shoulder at that point, so I just laid the whole cardigan out flat. The seam was the center point of that armhole, so once it was laid out flat, I could kind of see where the, underarm, seam in the middle, so that was the sleeve hole. And I used stitch markers to mark out the center points as well as the quarter points on the sleeves themselves. So both, basically in the end, I had marked out the center point as well as the quarter points on both the body of the sleeve, so that hole that was there, as well as on the sleeve. And from there, I knew that I just had to work to each stitch marker at a time, because when you're sewing it on, you're encountering the body of the sweater, which is being knit this way, and then the sleeves of the sweater, which were knit this way. So you have to make sure that those points are, your gauge is like all meeting up on how many bars you're picking up. I will do my best to remember to include the video that I have followed for any time I've done the mattress stitch, and I've been very successful every time I've done it. So I will try to include that in the description for you. And just by reducing the amount that you have to be aware of, it makes it so much easier and you're able to stay on track so much better.
Rehidron este soluția ideală. Ia-l cu tine oriunde, se diluează doar cu apă. Rehidron îți redă rapid energia.
Хотел скидки? Они уже ждут тебя в Дарвин! Скидки до 50%!
Ай-яй-яй-яй-яй, stop!
Выбери Poco X6 Pro с памятью 512 гигабайт за 6199 лев. Или наушники Marshall Major 4 всего за 1999 лев. Только до 1 декабря в Дарвин!
Which reminds me that I wish I had done the same thing when I did the shoulder seams, because the front and back were never going to line up where the diamond was. That wasn't something that I had factored in. No one factored that in. Taylor Swift didn't factor it in. Allison didn't factor it in, that the diamonds would ever line up at the shoulder seam. But definitely one of them lines up a little better than the other. So I just wish that it was a little more symmetrical overall. But it doesn't bother me. No one's paying attention to that. So that's just a reminder, though, that anytime that you are doing a mattress stitch or just seaming any pieces together, mark out points that you can hit on both sides so that everything does line up the way that you want it to. And it's just as easy as folding that sleeve in half, marking the center, folding the edge to the center, marking that quarter point. From there, so on and so forth. A little bit of knitting origami coming here from your resident origami convention pro. It just makes life so much easier. It's easier to find those points, match them up, make sure you're staying on track, and adjust sooner if you have to. On one of the sleeves, I did have to pull out a little bit of my stitching to just make sure that I was staying on track and working at a good ratio. Once I had sewn the sleeves to the body, I then had basically like a sort of bearskin, a little bearskin rug of this sweater. And so from there, I just had to fold the front to the back, which then meant that the sleeves were folding in on themselves. And then I was able to do that mattress stitch again from the cuffs up to the underarm and from the underarm down to the body. And that was how I did it on both sides. That wound up being a lot easier because all of those stitches are facing the same direction. So as long as you stay by picking up 2 bars and 2 bars and stay consistent with that as you go, then you should stay on track. I definitely recommend doing that after everything is steamed, blocked, all of that, because even still I had some of my edges curling a little bit. So there were a few times where I caught a stitch that was kind of further inside than it was on the edge, and I had to just rip that out a little bit, but it wasn't the end of the world. And I also recommend just doing that in a spot where you're able to lay your garment out flat. Like I did it on the bed. It was just the easiest way for me to have it sitting flat and not in my lap in a way that I'm like just holding the stitches that I'm working with. It was sitting flat exactly how I wanted it to be. Once all of that was seamed up, it was time to do the hem. So I was able to put my stitches back on the needles from those, from the try-it-on tubing where I did the provisional cast-on onto. I love that concept. So much easier than any other provisional cast-on that I've tried. I definitely would do that again in the future. I dropped down my needle size, so the whole sweater was knit in 5mm needles, and I did all of the ribbing in 4.5mm needles. And basically eyeballed it. Just decided how long was looking appropriate for the length of this, because I knew that whatever it was, I wanted to match that on the button band. So I didn't even measure. I just eyeballed it and then did 2 rows of setup rows and a sewn bind off. The one thing I did do was, because this grew so much with the seam blocking, I was nervous that the hem would wind up flaring a little bit. And so on my first row of ribbing, I did wind up doing a total of 4 increases just at the side seams, so that I could kind of help it to tuck in a little bit on the sides, so that when I did block it, and I was very cognizant of steaming it without stretching that hem out too much, because with wear, I imagine it'll stretch out and I never want it to flare. So I wound up going through, I did a row of knit 1, purl 1, and then the next row that I had done, when I hit the side seams, I basically did a knit 1, purl 2 together, and then a knit 2 together, and then purl 1. That was how I resolved that. Did the sewn binds off there, counted how many rows I had. It wound up being 12 rows. And then I moved on to the button band. I went around and picked up all of my stitches and then knit. Oh, that was where I made my next mistake, was I forgot to mark out where I wanted the buttonholes and the buttons, therefore, before I picked up all my stitches. And it's the only thing that I'm having an issue with on this sweater. And so I'm gonna tell my sister if it bothers her too, then I'll fix it later. I just wanted to get it to her for now. But I wound up marking out where I wanted the buttonholes after I picked up all the stitches, and with it being all scrunched and cinched, I really didn't get a good idea of where those buttons would lay and where it like naturally turned in and stuff. Taylor Swift's version has 2 buttons. Allison's had 3 buttons. I went out looking for buttons and couldn't find any. Realized that I had these in my stash and they looked so good on here. So I was like, perfect, we will use those. And they're a little bit smaller than I would have liked. So I felt like 3 buttons was more appropriate than 2. But in the end, I do feel like my buttonholes, this one is just too high. So I wish one of 2 things. Either I did the 3 buttons still, but this top one was literally down here. And then the next one was in the center, and then the one at the bottom. Or I do think I could have gotten away with just 2 buttons if the first one was still here, like literally between these 2. And then the next one was a little bit higher, so then that bottom was like a little more free-flowing. It's my only issue, and I'm just hoping that because my sister is smaller, maybe this one hits her at a more natural point, where on me it looks like a little bit, it looks like when you have a dress that's like a little too revealing and you just safety pin it for modesty's sake and negate all fashion. And it, you know, it looks like I intentionally wanted this button to be very high, and I didn't. And it even bothers me when it's open. Like I said, hopefully on my sister it looks a little bit better and works with her proportions. But if not, I'm gonna tell her I'll just fix it after the fact. And I think I'll even just fix it by sewing up the buttonholes and like forcing a couple new ones, and then getting 2 bigger buttons and then moving them down. Anyway, I knit 5 rows, and then on the 6th row, I did a 2-stitch bind off where I wanted each of my buttons, and then started a new set of 6 rows to get to my 12. So did I just say that? On the 6th row. On the 6th row is where I done the 2-stitch bind off, and then on my new set of 6 rows, I cast on 2 new stitches on that first one, and then knit the 4 rows, did a 2-row setup with a knit 1, slip 1, and then a sew and bind off. The reason I chose to do a knit 1, slip 1 setup rows, the setup rows with the knit 1, slip 1, was again because of the way that this was blocking out with the seam. I was so nervous I was going to get a flaring if I didn't control that. And that's the only time that I will be using setup rows, is if I'm concerned about flaring in the ribbing, I will use that.
Haine perfect uscate și catifelate cu uscătorul de rufe 1000. Te așteptăm să descoperi ofertele speciale de Black Friday. Premium Store, Ștefan cel Mare 6.
Then the only thing left to do was the cuffs, which I did find that my sleeves wound up being a little bit roomier than I needed them to be. I think I could have even gotten away with the amount of stitches that Allison has in her pattern. So I would note that if you're planning to knit this, even in Allison's version, I would say that those sleeves might wind up being a little big because these are pretty roomy. I think it looks nice in the end, but when I first finished them, I was like, that is huge, but it just looks really relaxed. So I wound up grabbing those stitches from the tried on tubing, the provisional cast on, and I did the same rate of decreases as she would have had you do increases in her pattern, which meant that basically I did knit 1, purl 1, knit 2 together, purl 1, knit 1, purl 2 together across the whole thing. So I decreased by quite a few stitches, and then knit those 12 stitches of, or 12 rows of 1x1 ribbing, and then the sew and bind off again with those setup rows at the end. And then I just made sure that when I was blocking things, I did not stretch out the hem on the cuff at all. I just hit it with a seam to make it kind of marry in with everything else. And I think that was just about everything. The only other thing is I had left the back of this, actually you really can tell here. So instead of binding off so that there was a scoop on the back here, I wound up leaving the center as the tallest point, the way that you would see in a drop shoulder sweater where you get that trapezoid kind of shape in the back. I think just because of the bulkiness of the ribbing, I should have just bound off the, I don't know, maybe 2 rows earlier and left the shoulders a little bit more proud, just so that this ribbing sat, I mean, the littlest bit down further, because it does kind of climb up the back of the neck. I don't think in a bad way, it's fine, but that's one thing that I'm like, oh, it's just the littlest bit too tall. So while I don't like the look of it scooping down in the back, I think because I was going to build it up so much with that ribbing, it should have been, I should have bound off the center back of the neck stitches, maybe 3 rows actually, I would say, sooner than I wound up doing, and that's okay too. It's totally not the end of the world. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to go through this quickly because I know I'm like a broken record at this point, but I'm so proud that I was able to get this done in time. I think it looks amazing. I think it's fitting me pretty well. The sleeves, if I was making this for myself, I would want a little bit longer, but hopefully that means it fits her just right and just cozy. And let me just give you the final breakdown. That's what I'm pulling up here on the iPad, and we can be done with this. So again, this pattern is the Poet's Cardigan by Allison Schmidt. I did modify it heavily, and I will do my best to take some time over the next week to input all of my notes into Ravelry so that you can follow this if you'd like to. It's a free pattern, so the pattern price is $0. The yarn that I used was Lion Brand Wool Ease. Now, I've mentioned this before, that the yarn and all of this yarn was purchased by my aunt as a gift for my sister for me to knit, just like that folklore cardigan was. So it came in the folklore cardigan, the 2X, 3X kit. And so there's actually also some contrast yarn that I still have that I will put to use somewhere else. But this yarn was gifted to me by my aunt to gift to my sister. So it's Lion Brand Wool Ease. You can just purchase that separately in the store. And in fact, if you're going to knit this cardigan, I would say just go buy it in the store because you could get it cheaper than you would the kit. The color is Heather Gray. And if you pay for this yarn full price, again, at the store, not the kit, then you're going to wind up paying about $5.49 full price. But you can always find sales on Joann's, Michael's, wherever you can get your hands on this. So definitely it's a very cost-effective yarn for that price. This was gifted to me, so I didn't pay anything for it. And I wound up tapping into the full 9 skeins of this color that came in the kit. So I did just barely use anything from that 9th skein, but I would recommend having 9 if you're planning to knit this according to the same dimensions that I did, which means that if you paid full price for this yarn, which you really shouldn't because you can always get it on sale, then you would spend about $49.41 on the whole project. Again, I didn't pay for the yarn, so I had spent nothing. The buttons, these were some more of the buttons that I had got at that local yarn shop that had gone out of business, and I'm calling it about $1 because I know that they were very, very affordable, which means that had I paid for all of the yarn at full price, plus the buttons and everything, the total for the project would be about $50.41. But because all I had to pay for were the buttons, this cost me $1, and really, like, not even, because those were in my stash, so it doesn't count, right? And in total, you guys, this project was on my needles for 24 days. A record, I'm pretty sure. Crazy. The only final thoughts that I really want to share about it is that I am a huge fan of this yarn after having worked with it now for 2 different garments. This is the first one I've been able to try on since the one for my cousin was just so teeny tiny. This feels so nice on. Obviously, I haven't like worn it around, but I had tried it on. I did all the try on clips with it. And it's very light and drapey, and it's an acrylic wool blend. It is mostly acrylic. There's a tiny percentage of wool in there, but I think that it's enough that it just kind of, first of all, it dulls the yarn in a good way. It's not that shiny, plasticky looking acrylic. It is a very soft fabric. I don't find this to be at all itchy. I think I've asked my boyfriend about it because he is a little bit more sensitive to itchier wools, and from his perspective, he didn't find this to be itchy. I honestly think I'd like to knit myself up a kind of similar vibe of garment for myself. I have another kit in the cream color of this yarn, so I think maybe I will knit up a cardigan for myself, and that probably not another Taylor Swift anything. I'm done with Taylor Swift for a good while now, but I like the way that it performs in cables, and it just creates this really light kind of thinner fabric, and I think it's perfect for gifting, especially if you don't know if they're, sensitive or it's easy maintenance, it's easy to care for, but it still looks really beautiful, and the knitting experience versus just a standard acrylic is so much better. And I would say even I would rather knit up this yarn than a superwash wool. That's just my opinion, but if you looked at this yarn, considered it before, and you've been on the fence, I think you should go for it. I think you'll really enjoy the overall look and feel. Just remember that, of course, wash it, but if you want to block it, steaming is the way to go. Those are all my thoughts on my finished object, the Poet's Cardigan. And yeah, I'm just so excited. I will try to post some photos of my sister in the cardigan, as I told her to be prepared to try it on for me tonight when I go see her. And yeah, I just hope that she really loves it. A lot of love went into it, and I'm really proud of where it's wound up. So that is the finished Poet's Cardigan. Also, let this be a reminder to
Sinupred, fitopreparația împotriva sinuzitei. Sinupred Extract, formulă multă concentrare și eficacitate mai înaltă.
Not stress yourself out over gift knitting this holiday season. Please don't try to knit a sweater in 3 weeks. Please don't try to knit sleeves in a week. Make sure that you are managing your time and taking care of you and your hands above all else, because honestly, nothing is that serious. And while this was an interesting and fun challenge, and I am impressed with myself that I was able to get it done in time, I wish that it was not the case. And I wish that I had managed my time and planned it better so that I wasn't down to the wire here. So I just want to voice that because I know we're in a season where everyone's going to be trying to get things done in record time, and you don't have to. You just don't have to do that to yourself. So allow me to give you permission to not. All right, so we've already been here now for forever, but I just have one whip to share with you today, and that is my yoga winter sweater by Moringa Rook. It's knit out of Barocco Ultra Wool in the colorway, think, bear? I think that's what it's called. This has just been my mindless knitting over the week. I went to go see a local show over the weekend, and I was able to get some work in on this, and that was the only time I worked on it because otherwise I was fully dedicated to my poet's cardigan. This is a raglan top-down, really high turtleneck sweater. Mine is the size extra large, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought today we could just try this on really quick because I literally have done a few rows in the round under the arms since I split for the sleeves, and I have yet to try this on properly since. So I was trying to be like kind of efficient and just use one really long bit of the try-it-on tubing while I was holding the sleeves, but I think I'm gonna have to just cut that in half in order to try it on real quick. All right, I'll tie those up. And then, you know what, maybe I will check really quick and see if there were any, it's been a long time since we did a try-it-on tubing and chat segment, and I know that I said the last time that I would try to use this as a like Q&A time, so let's pull up a question real quick. Okay, I have a question pulled up, so why don't we go ahead and start my favorite segment that we have not done in so long, the try-it-on tubing and chat. I missed doing that. Okay. Oh, do I have my try-it-on tubing? I do. I already cut a link. Okay. By the way, I do always have this linked, I believe, in the description box below. I just have a big roll of this that I get on Amazon, and I have yet to run out after a year of just like cutting off pieces and losing them. So while I am moving this over, I actually just referred back to the last time I did a Q&A and just went through to find a question that I hadn't answered when I came across one from Whitney, from Knitted by Whitney, and I remember her asking about this, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna answer that. Totally didn't get around to it. So Whitney asked a few questions. First one is, how do you find time to release a podcast every Saturday? And it's a very valid question. The easiest answer is that when I started this channel now over a year ago, I told myself that I had to set a sort of routine, and no matter what, I would have to stick to it. And I thought that that was something that would just keep me motivated in the beginning. It didn't matter how many people were watching or what all was going on with the videos. I just knew that if I said I'm going to have a video out every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m., then no matter what, I would have to stick to that. Now, it totally does mean that there are weeks that, especially in the beginning, I was up some nights until like 5 a.m. getting the video together. But realistically, I carve out an hour and a half to sit down and film this video once a week, and then it takes me a good afternoon to edit it. But I also tell myself on the weeks where I just don't have the time, or if I'm not feeling particularly motivated, to just get it edited. I can take literally 12 hours to knit a podcast if I want to. That's when I'm doing a lot of the special effects. Honestly, it takes me more so that amount of time when I'm doing like a pattern roundup, and that's why I kind of stopped doing those as frequently, because those really do take a lot of time to produce them the way that I like them to wind up being. But I really just make sure to set aside an hour and a half to film. And as long as I have that, then I can carve out the editing time in however long I need it to be. It definitely takes me at least a few hours to edit a video, but I try to tell myself, like, as long as it gets done, it doesn't matter how long it takes, it doesn't matter how many edits you did, just get it done, because I am certainly guilty of being a perfectionist and being someone that just doesn't put things out into the world because I didn't get them to the point I wanted them to be. And I knew that if I didn't just give myself a time limit, it has to be done, then this would wind up being exactly that for me. So I know that's kind of a lame answer, but that's how I manage to get them done every week. And then she also asks how I manage to get so much knitting done every week, as well as how do you manage different whips. And the short answer is that I have a flexible schedule as a bridal hairstylist. I also do a lot of traveling for my work in the very busy seasons, of course. And I take my knitting with me, and I always show up wherever I'm going to a wedding like half an hour to an hour early. And I like to have that time to just sit in my car and kind of be to myself, and I knit in that time in my car. And you'd be surprised by how much that adds up. But it also really helps to set the tone for what's otherwise a really chaotic day. You know, being there for people's the biggest day of their lives. And so it's good time for me, but it's also good time to get something done. And then my other tip for juggling different whips is, if you can help it, try not to have more than a simple stockinette in the round project and then a more mindful project, something that's following a chart. Try not to have more than one of each of those on your needles at the same time. Right now, that's not the case, but I'm sure that you'll notice week by week, I do only wind up working on one mindless knit and one mindful knit. And so that's the easiest way I've been able to juggle doing different whips. And then if I'm really determined to get something done, I will tell myself that if I have designated sitting down knitting time right now, it has to be put towards the mindful knit, the one that I have to be paying attention to. And then if it's something where we're watching soccer or I'm sitting in my car or just on the go, then getting those mindless knits done, it's a lot easier. That being said, I'm not someone who brings my knitting out to dinner or the movies or those sorts of things. I went to go see a show by myself over the weekend, and so that was why I took my knitting with me. But otherwise, my knitting is pretty much done in time that I have by myself, and I think I know how to use that time wisely to get done what I like to get done. And it also comes down to me being someone who is like chronically I have a productivity issue. I love to be doing something at all times, and knitting is something that keeps me able to do things while relaxing at the same time. So I hope that that helps. Thank you for asking your questions, Whitney. And with that, we are on the Try It On tubing. So why don't we go ahead and get this thing on? We can end this week's segment of Try It On tubing and chat.
Descoperă o lume a frumuseții fără limite, o selecție unică de produse cosmetice, parfumuri, produse cosmetice și de îngrijire din toate colțurile lumii, cadouri și oferte săptămânale. Makeup.md.
Fiecare zi prinde culoare cu Maib și gama noastră de carduri. Acum cu un design fresh și dinamic. Descoperă noile carduri Maib și alege-l pe cel potrivit stilului tău financiar. Comandă online direct din aplicația MyBank. Cu cardul tău Maib, tu conduci.
I did also intentionally wear this sweater today so that I could just take this off and throw this one on. There we go. Oof, it's all staticky now. And I'd love to not get makeup all over this. All right, here we go. Hello. Oh gosh, such a relief, right? When you finally try something on and it's actually fitting. So beautiful. Oh my gosh, I feel very chic in a turtleneck. I don't think I own a turtleneck. If I do, I certainly don't get a lot of wear out of it. But I don't think I've owned one that I've actually liked. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I did have one that was like a beige color. So it just really washed me out. And to be bringing that all the way up to my chin was kind of a lot. Whereas this really rich, purpley undertone, dark brown, that just looks like really nice and chic. Now, okay, trying this on right now. Obviously, this is unblocked and this is super wash wool. So this is supposed to stretch. And if you look at the photos of the designer's sweater, her neck actually comes down quite far. Like the turtleneck really does drop down quite far. So I'm hoping that when I block this, the same thing will happen for mine, because I would rather it not just be like way up in my chin, but rather just like that makes the biggest difference for me. If that is how this winds up being, I'm going to absolutely love it. So far, I'm feeling like I have a really beautiful amount of ease. In fact, it's sitting kind of exactly where my shirt is, and kind of this like oversized button down. And this one, like, maybe I need a vest. Oh, I kind of like the look of it just hanging off the shoulder like that. You see those vests that just drop over the sides a little bit, and I actually never thought I'd like that look, but I actually think this looks quite nice. So the raglan, it has the short rows on the back, whereas the beginning of round is on the front here. Again, I can't figure it out if I did something wrong or if that's just how it is. And I've been knitting this up on the 5mm needles, but on the shorty needles, because my regular 5mm needles were reserved for the Poets cardigan. So I'm excited to switch that over and have standard size needles to knit this up in. But I do think that this is going to be a really great staple for my wardrobe. I think this looks terrific. I will stand up so you can get a better look. Love it. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen with this one is the point where in the body the decreases start to create the really interesting shaping and the split hem that's at the bottom of it. But until then, I do have a little bit of mindless stockinette in the round. I have mentioned before that I have two different dye lots of this yarn, and I thought I was going to start doing the helical knitting in the body, but because I was at that show and it just had to keep going, I haven't yet done that. So I'm still working from the same dye lot, and I believe I have one more ball of yarn that's from this same dye lot. I think what I'm going to wind up doing is just knit through what I can with the yarn that I have, because I'm feeling like I'm going to have more yarn left over than I needed. I never did a gauge swatch. I'm just eyeballing things, but it feels like I'm going to have a bit of yarn left over. So I think I will reserve the helical knitting for the sleeves, just because those are in the round for a way more substantial period of time. Versus in the body, I'm only going to be in the round for a few inches, and then it's going to start doing those decreases. I'd like for that to happen right around the top of the high-waisted jeans that I'm wearing now. I think that'll look really nice. And yeah, I'm so excited. I'm glad that I cast this on, definitely. Although this turtleneck is actually causing me just, it's a little much right now. But after blocking this, I think it's going to look really great. The good news is too, after you just saw me taking that on and off, it's actually the cast on is so stretchy. So I have no problem getting that over my head. And I can see that where before I felt like my cast on was pretty ugly. And I still don't think that it looks the greatest. It definitely does look better when it's a little more stretched out. So hopefully that's something that fixes itself when I block this and get it all sorted. I've never actually taken out a cast on or a bind off. I've never actually done that before. But I could see myself, after all is said and done, unpicking this cast on and trying to make that look a little bit neater. But I am happy with how stretchy it is, which is what I was very mindful of, and I think part of why it does look so sloppy. But yeah, that's where we're at with this one. It has been on the needles today for 23 days, so just a day less than the Poet's cardigan. And I think that is the most indicative thing of just how much work I've put into the Poet's cardigan versus this measly little thing. And this has truly just been that mindless knitting that I take when, you know,
Oh
when
no,
I can
no,
roast
no,
and
no,
stop
don't
watching and
fall,
show,
please.
all that sort of stuff. So that is my winter yoga
I
sweater.
need
That will
to
never roll off the tongue. I will
stabilize
yoga winter
my
sweater. Did I say that?
phone.
It's a rough one for me. On the needles for 23 days today. To wrap things up, I had
think,
mentioned at
look,
the beginning of the
it's
video
broke
that I had like a
completely.
little bit of a small sort of giveaway type thing. The Artemisia sweater that I had test knit for
My
Emma's
cat
Knits, that was that
came
really
by.
gorgeous blue clay raglan style sweater. That is going to be released very soon. I don't think she's given an exact date as of yet, but having tested the pattern, she did invite her testers to choose another pattern of hers to be gifted as a compensation for doing the test knit. And I asked her if I could actually give that away to one of you guys because I have most of her patterns already. I love she also designed that clematis vest that I had done, and I have the long sleeve already. So I really wanted to make sure that one of you had the opportunity to receive that pattern for free. I haven't, she said that was totally fine. I did specifically say for the Artemisia sweater, but I'm sure that as it was presented to me that I could pick any pattern from her library. I'm sure that you could too. I just know that there were so many of you who were interested in knitting that Artemisia sweater, and in full honesty, I have been wearing that sweater at least 2-3 times a week. It is my favorite. That is what I throw on when we're running out of the house. It's just the coziest, most comfortable, most amazing sweater, and it is the yarn that makes it, but it's also nice to have a nice raglan sweater just in your library. So if you would like an opportunity to be gifted a free pattern from Emma's Knits, then all I ask that you do is go ahead and leave a comment down below. If you could comment using hashtag Emma, and then if you want to, you know, just for funsies, as long as you include hashtag Emma, I will consider you in the giveaway of the pattern. But then if you also want to let us know what you're working on, maybe what you've got going on for Thanksgiving, just to give you something to comment with, if you feel funny writing, just hashtag Emma. And then it would mean a lot to me if you would go ahead and give her a follow on Instagram. I just really think that Emma's patterns are so beautiful and well thought out. And she's one of the designers that just is so receptive to feedback. In fact, you might remember that when I finished my Artemisia sweater, I had this whole conversation about sizing and letters versus numbers. And honestly, this is like one of the coolest parts about doing this. Emma is going to be releasing this pattern with numbered sizes. That was all because of the discussion that we had here in the comment section and where you all voiced your opinions, and the majority of people said that they preferred patterns written with numbered sizes 1 through 9 versus your standard extra small, small, that sort of thing. And Emma and I had talked about it before, and then she came out and said, oh my gosh, I read the comments and I am definitely releasing this pattern with numbered sizes, and we'll see how that goes. And I just wanted to say one more time, because I don't think I say it enough, thank you for creating this space where we can make a difference like that. Like, we just changed the system of sizing for a designer, and that is insane to me. Which also reminds me, if there's ever a conversation that you'd like to have and you'd like a platform to talk about it in with knitting patterns, any sort of things that you'd like to open up for discussion, let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to kind of try something like that again, where we're just crowdsourcing ideas and I'm voicing my opinions, they're being heard, you're voicing yours, they're being heard, and literally Emma is changing the way that she is listing the size in this pattern to make sense for the majority. And that is the coolest thing. Literally that could bring me to tears, just the way that making that difference is so significant. And so this is my way of saying thank you. I'm giving you guys the free pattern that would have otherwise been given to me. And I just want to make sure that we're supporting Emma because she is receptive to what you have to say. And that is an amazing feeling coming from a designer who's willing to make those changes. That's just so cool. So yes, if you would just, as my own personal ask, if you would go give Emma's page a little look through and follow her on Instagram or like her patterns on Ravelry, just to go support her because she's supporting us, and that's amazing. So hashtag Emma will enter you in the giveaway to win one of Emma's patterns, and I will be announcing it out loud from my own mouth. I won't respond in the comment section or message you or anything like that in next week's podcast video, being the Saturday after Thanksgiving, so November 30th. So if you could please leave those comments for me by 12 noon on Friday, November 29th Eastern Time, then I will be picking a winner and I will announce it in next week's podcast video. Hope that makes sense. And just, of course, as always, please make sure that you're subscribed to be considered for the giveaway prize. Okay. Lots of excitement. Wish me luck getting this cardigan to my sister today. And like I said, let me know what you've got going on for the holiday, what you're knitting on, what's going on in your world right now. I'd love to know. And otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, I would so appreciate it if you would go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you subscribe and ring the bell, you're going to be notified anytime I post a new video. However, I post a podcast video just like this one every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And with that, you guys, a big old thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. All right, bye.
I love her.
Историк моды, лектор, писатель Александр Васильев приглашает на светский раут в Кишиневе. Тайны модных домов мира откроются 30 ноября в Дворце Республики. Билеты на сайте Афиша МД. Желающие смогут приобрести книги.
Guess I can decrease here. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Hi everybody, my name is Shannon. Welcome to my channel, Another Yarn. Thank you so much for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. Oh my goodness, so today is an enabler alert. I have to say these things, right? I mean, you know, I'm not telling you to buy things. I'm just going to tell you things that I've
I'm
discovered.
very close.
Right? It's yarn related. It's, you know, and you're an adult and you can do what you want. So I saw Tyler from Arcane Fiberworks has a Black Friday sale on his website, 20% off. All right, that's cool. And I think it goes until the 2nd of December. Not positive. I think I saw that, but that could have been another site. So if you're interested, by all means, go check it out. If you're not, please stay away because it is very tempting. That's all I'm going to say, right? That's your warning. Yeah, I'm excited. So 20% off. What does that mean? Well, in the U.S. dollars, it's $26 a skein right now per skein, and there's 4 sizes. All right, 100-gram hanks. Okay. Goes down to $20.80. That is amazing. That is a great price. So here's some of the colors that I got on my last order. I had all these packed up because I went to visit one of my friends and I'm like, hey, you want to see all the new colors I got? Not all of these are still available just because Tyler's smart. I'm gonna pull these out. I know it's, okay, I just made a mess. They went flying. All right. So Tyler is smart. He retires his colors. Like this one right here. This is called Fall Feelings. And that is what instigated this entire order. It just is, right? I had to have this. I saw this in person at the Quilter's Cottage in Nebraska. They carry yarn, and I saw this in person in worsted weight yarn, and it was so gorgeous and so amazing. I had to have it. All my stuff is in fingering weight because, yeah, I like fingering weight yarn. I have an obscene amount of fingering weight yarn. So this one's not available, but some of these others are if you're inclined, right? This gorgeous golden yellow. I mean, that's just stunning. One of my absolute favorites he still has is Wild Onion. I have a sweater quantity of that. And to go with that, I have this beautiful Wine Time. And I don't have it here. I've got it downstairs already put away. I also have that juniper color right here, a solid of that. I mean, oh my goodness. So I can definitely make a sweater. I found out I can do a sweater for myself with 4 full hanks. absolute full length, right? I don't have to make sweaters, but I mean, what a gorgeous fade. You put that juniper with it, and then this and this. Oh my gosh, just amazing. So it's not like they have to be sweaters. That's just an option, you know, or like this.
To make a drawing, you need time, drawing space, something to draw on, and Clip Studio Paint.
This app is a total game changer for artists, illustrators, and animators.
Whether you're a beginner or a professional artist, Clip Studio Paint is packed with tools that make the creative process smooth and enjoyable.
Isn't that stunning? Yeah, I'm thrilled. So all these different colors, these two are still available. Yeah, wine time and golden yellow. Those are still available. I know I Ain't Afraid to Go No Ghost is still available, and I think I have 4 of these now, maybe. Or no, I have 2 of these, and I have the charcoal to go with it, which is that darker gray right here. Love that. That's what I love that charcoal. It goes with so many of his colors. It just does. It's just a great color to go with it. Definitely enjoying it. I grabbed creamy coffee and chestnut to go with some of my other things, just because, you know, sometimes you just need some of those browns to go with, well, things that I have anyway. My husband's like, you like all that boring stuff. Yes, I do. I do like that boring stuff. It's okay. I like that. So those are just some of the things that I have in my stash. This one is still available. You Shall Not Pass. I have a sweater on you this. Hubby got this, so we can make semi-matching sweaters. No, I'm not gonna grab it. So we can do the semi-matching.
They don't match.
This is the 3rd sleeve of his sweater that I'm pulling out because he didn't like the way the colors line up. But this one is Burning Desire. Or no, this one's not Burning Desire. This one's Rising Phoenix. Phoenix Rising. This one's still available too. Stunning. And yeah, so if you were wanting to get some and you know, it's just pricey, and we get that. I mean, everyone's budget's different. 20% discount is absolutely huge, especially for a individual hand dyer, not a big conglomerate type of a thing. Spectacular. So some of the other things I just wanted to, I had to do. This isn't going to be a super long video or whatever. I mean, I can blabber on for a while. I mean, it's yarn. Whoa. So teasers for tomorrow, for everybody that's new here, because I've gotten a lot of new subscribers recently, I do a Monday video and I show everything that I've made and worked on throughout the week. You know, I'll stack it all around me and everything and set that up. So teaser for tomorrow's video, you see these? You see this? This is the Malabrigo Aurora, I think that's how you say it, that I just got yesterday, black and secret. Notice they're not full balls anymore, and they're not attached to anything anymore. You know what that means, right? Yeah, I finished a hat. I did, and with these colors, and it is stunning. So I will show that tomorrow, and I'm so excited. And that's what I was talking about with when you work on something and the yarn gets you, it's just, oh my gosh, these two together were just stunning. They are amazing. When the yarn gets you and the pattern calls to you, you can't set it down. It's just, I have to do it. That's just the exciting. I mean, I also have this. Look how well it matches my shirt. Not planned, but that does really well. This I got in the Premier Yarn sale. This is Universal Cassette. And I'm working on a hat with this because it's big, it's bulky, it feels nice. My husband was like, well, he loves the way it feels, but he's like, that's a boring, bland color for you. Whatever, I thought it was cool. Or, you know, it's one of those, like, never touched it, felt it, whatever, I thought I would try it. So that's the thickness of that, right? And I am working on a hat. I have pulled out, I kept the ribbing, and I was working on one pattern with it. I pulled it back to the ribbing. I'm working on another pattern with it. Not happy. I don't know if it's the yarn itself, the color, the whatever. I've done 2 patterns with it, and no, just not there. And yet, I just bought this yarn yesterday, and I've already got a hat. So it makes a huge difference. If you find when you're making something that you're just really, really slowing down, it's okay sometimes to just pull it out and start something else, because you might find you'll get it done twice as fast. You might find that that thing that you're making will be so exciting with a new project, new yarn. And new yarn doesn't mean you have to go buy it. New yarn just means go dig it in your stash, right? It means not the thing you were currently working on. So I just wanted to throw that one out there. And then another teaser, where'd it go? It's all underneath all the Arcane Fireworks. You remember this? Yeah, how pretty is that? This is the Joanne Big Twist, one of their Christmas colors. It's called Merry Mingle. And it is just a worsted weight yarn, just a value worsted weight yarn in their Christmas color. I love the way that looks. So I immediately started with a project with that, a child's cardigan. I think it will fit one of my granddaughters, 8, 9 years old, something around there. I have all the pieces of the cardigan done. I know. So I will see about blocking those so then it'll look like something instead of just this curled up, you know how stockinette stitch looks. It's just going to be a curl. So I'll see about blocking that so then I can show that to you tomorrow too. You know, a little bit of a teaser. So really excited about some of the stuff as far as that, and especially the cardigan, because I've been so focused on making hats. I don't know how many I made this week. I'll figure that out right before I turn the video camera on and then show those things. And it just, like I said, it goes to show when you are passionate about whatever it is that you're making, it is going to just fly. And being that we have birthdays coming up, my family, a lot of the family is November, December, and January. So really heavy on birthdays and holidays. There's some other things that I have promised that I really need to start working on. And I might pull those out and show progress or lack thereof, and then we can start marking it together. You've been around a while, you'll recognize the things that I pull up. I know, it's crazy. But yeah, that's what's going on. It's just the sales that are there are exciting. Oh, that's the other thing. I want to know personally, did you find some sales? And which ones are getting you? I mean, there are so many things going on in the yarning world. And Knit Picks has its annual Black Friday sale going on right now. I know Hobby has sales. They had their October sales, their Halloween sales. They've got their Black Friday stuff going on also. I just really took advantage of the last premiere sale, really big sale. But what ones are getting to you? What sales, what yarn sites are your go-to yarn sites that you just absolutely cannot resist? I would love to know. I would love to find out. I just scroll and look at yarn. I mean, yeah, you would think it's a job. It's not. That's just what I do, right? It's just, that's my fun. That's my fun time is yarn related. It's been that way for years. And if you found some things, let me in on your secret. And as I find things, I'll let you in on my secret. We're just us. We got it. It's just us. There you go. We'll get the sales before everyone else. It's a pact. We're good. We're good. So anyway, I just wanted to pop on and say that really quick. I've been blabbering for 10 minutes. I think that's long enough. Let me let you go. You guys have a great day, night, evening, whatever it happens to be. And I will talk to you again later. Bye-bye.
Хотел скидки? Они уже ждут тебя в Дарвин! Скидки до 50% и кредит 0% на Black Friday! Выбери MacBook Air всего за 15 390 лев и Apple Watch Ultra 2 с уникальной скидкой 4060 лев! Только до 1 декабря в Дарвин!
Hi, my name's Laura McKendry and I'm an artist and illustrator. Working with clients such as John Lewis, Waterstones and Profile Books. My images have been published globally for book covers, packaging and merchandise. I teach drawing and illustration at Central St Martin's University of the Arts London and also run creative workshops at other venues in a playful and relaxed way. My creative process is all about living playfully.
Leave me alone, you people with their... Oh my god, with the commercials. I can't even finish up a sleeve without you people and your commercials.
So you don't have to wear headphones. Personally, I just don't like the nerdy big cans on my head podcast look. So.
Oh, it's just that. Superficial.
It is just that superficial. That is why we're not doing it. I am vain.
Hello, it is a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You just walked through the halls of the New York Times. This is your
did.
first time here, right?
It is my first time in this building. Yes, I saw the red staircase, and that really is the main thing, isn't it? That you think of when you walk through this. It's empty right now, though. We're here quite early.
We are
so
here
it's
quite
less
early.
bustling than you would want a cartoon newsroom to be.
I will take that under advisement. It usually is busy. We are busy here normally.
This is not an accusation of there's basically nothing happening here at the New York Times.
Never,
Just as
never.
it happens, if you were looking for people throwing balled up pieces of paper at each other and yelling about deadlines, that was not my experience.
Not your experience, not yet.
No.
Not yet. We are in this very contentious political moment. And one of the things that I noticed was that you have said you've never wanted to cover a debate on your show.
Yes.
Is that still true, even though President Biden had this unbelievable debate in June that caused the race to upend itself, and the most recent debate with Kamala Harris and Trump, I mean, they've been pretty consequential.
Yes, I guess the Biden-Trump debate was pretty consequential because Biden isn't the nominee anymore, so it'd be hard to push back on that. I guess it's very hard to say how consequential it is in real time, isn't it? That's the problem. It can feel very consequential, but you just don't know. And so I don't know what we could add to the commentary on those debates that isn't widely available everywhere else. It feels like to a certain extent, our show has moved into an area where we are very much slow cooking, and so there's not much there for us. Also, those debates tend to be pretty uninspiring to me. As a form of entertainment, yeah, you could definitely be entertained by what happened, but you know what they actually mean, I don't know yet.
Right.
And however much better it felt to watch it, it is pretty depressing that it's this close. That's, I guess, my aftertaste from it. That it's still this close when everyone can see what you can see in that debate. It's hard not to find that somewhere between depressing, infuriating, and outrageous.
Last Week Tonight has been on the air for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that maps pretty neatly onto the Trump era.
You sounded like you were about to sigh then. It's been on for 10 years.
No, that's not what I was doing. Let me be clear. But when you look back, what are the biggest ways that you think the show has changed?
So when we first began, we were doing our main story in 1 week. Then it became clear that was a crazy thing to do. It was a terrible way to set it up because we would come up with the idea for a story, start writing 3 days later, researcher would come in and would wipe away everything that we just written. So now you're trying to write the show in 2 days, and that's not a good idea. So now the answer to how our shows change is that we write those main stories in 6 weeks. So we're writing 6 stories at one time. So that doesn't really relate to Trump's role in the last 10 years, but in terms of the development of our show, that is the most critical part of it.
You know, it's funny, going back to the first season as a viewer, I found it to be remarkably similar. No,
Oh,
I
really?
mean, yeah, there's a consistency there. I mean it as a compliment.
Okay,
There's
I was literally wincing both
I saw you
inside and
wincing.
outside.
You did this face like, what is she gonna say?
I don't do many interviews about myself, so I am kind of emotionally in a defensive position, and unfortunately, I think it's translating to my face.
Because I every time I say something, just your face looks like you're absolutely, you know, having a very, very difficult bowel movement. And so I'm sorry.
Wow.
Let me start again.
Yeah.
All right. You know, there is a consistency there, and it does seem like you understood what you were up to quite early on.
I think we learned some big lessons early on because I guess one of them would be we did one story called Prisons, and it was about 16 minutes, and that seemed like a long time at the time. And I think what we gradually learned was it is crazy to try and talk about all the problems with prisons in 16 minutes, especially if 2 of those minutes are going to be a song with Sesame Street characters at the end. So since then, we've basically come back and redone that story in 20 different ways, because we've talked about prison labor, prison phone calls, prison recidivism, prison re-entry. Like it's, there are so many different aspects to criminal justice. You can't just slap prisons on it and say, oh, we've done it now. It was, in hindsight, I look back at that and do slightly wince, thinking, oh man, we're moving really fast through some incredibly complicated aspects of this problem that deserve a lot more attention than we're giving it.
You know, you obviously say you don't do journalism.
Yeah.
I do see you as a sort of opinion columnist, though. I mean, it does seem like an extended, very pointed, very deliberate crafting of an argument that you want people to understand. Does that resonate for you?
Maybe. I mean, I think certainly by the end of the story, like the last few minutes of the story is opinion, right? That is so right. Whenever we're saying, so what can we do? Everything after that probably is an opinion because people will feel differently about that. Everything up to that point it is what it is. Like we've so rigorously fact and legal checked everything up to that point. There's no real opinion or wiggle room in that.
Well, I mean, opinion columnists also get fact checked. I guess what I'm getting at though is not that facts are mutable, but you can choose the kinds of arguments that one puts forward, right? And so you're crafting a narrative about certain issues.
I guess centrally we work really hard to make sure that we do incredibly rigorous fact checking, both because we want it to be right, and if we're talking about companies, just basic self-preservation. Right? You don't want.
How big is your fact checking team?
Oh, I mean, we have 6 senior researchers, 6 junior researchers, and a whole bunch of lawyers. So yeah, a lot. So yeah, it's very, very important to us. I guess that's why I'm instinctively pushing back a little bit on this. I'm not saying you used to tell it like this, but this is just opinion. That's it. Of course, you're right that how we feel about a story is probably present in terms of how we research it, but I really can't stress enough how much work goes into making sure that we are totally right on the facts. Like, if you're going to work this hard, we're going to put our researchers through this, we're going to, for 6 weeks, looking at sometimes incredibly dour stories. If you're going to ask writers to write jokes with sometimes incredibly bleak material, you want to make sure that stands up to scrutiny. That would be too depressing to make mistakes there.
Talk to me about the process. Who comes up with the ideas?
Everybody can pitch stories. That's everyone on staff can pitch stories in our email channel, and then we'll give it to a researcher to say, is there something here? Like, has this story shifted in any way? Is now a good time to tell this story? They'll go away for 2 or 3 days, come back with a broad answer on that. If we feel like it's worth going forward, we'll add a footage producer to that story to check whether there's any footage to go with it, whether there's something that we can show to tell the story. And then they will write packets over the next couple of weeks. There'll be like a 400-page footage packet, probably a 100-page research packet. The writers will have been following along with some of those meetings. Then they will take those packets away for a week, write outlines, jokeless outlines. Then we will combine those outlines. Then we will send them away to write a draft. That'll be another week. Then it'll be the production week.
And is it you that's deciding the topics?
Myself and Tim Carvell, we run the show together. Tim was at The Daily Show with me.
Yeah. And what are the ones that appeal to you the most?
That's a good question. I guess, what was there? God, I'm blanking. There was a story that we did recently that had Tim and I bouncing in our chairs a little bit and walking away from it.
Hospice care, Hawaii, RFK.
Why are you going to hit me with hospice care? I don't know. Hospice care was interesting, but I don't know that it was that. I don't know. I guess in general it'll be ones that feel really challenging, that it feels like we can bring something to. We've directed this machine that we've built, directed them at a complicated, perhaps superficially unappealing story and getting something palatable and fun out of it. Either that, or I guess the really honest answer is something very, very dumb.
So you have these heavy subjects, and the 2 ways that I see in your show that you use comedy is either taking something that has absolutely nothing to do with the subject at hand and just putting in something completely absurd, to lighten it, to give it levity, to just have it be a kind of mood breaker, or using things that are very much to do with the issue at hand, but are funny in and of themselves because people have said absurd things, or they've done things that are just kind of crazy. Is that the kind of stuff that you're looking for, the material that you're looking for after you've done the bones of, this kind of big endeavor?
You mean once we've got the outlines
of the story itself?
Yes, definitely. That is the challenge for the writers, and it's a really hard challenge, but it's a really satisfying one as well. And we try our best to put the writers in a position where they can succeed. But I think we've got better at that over the years. In the past, we would sometimes be handing them stuff that is so dry and so bleak, they justifiably would be sitting there going, what do you want me to do with this? Like, this is a horrendous episode of like a comedic Chopped. I can't give you a cake out of these ingredients. So now we try and like troubleshoot that on the way in so that they have stuff which is enough stuff which is light and funny enough that they can attack the material more directly, so that you vary the jokes. When it comes to pacing out the clips of the show, that is something that we look at constantly, but I guess the first time that we really reckon with it is when we get the writer's outlines and we combine them. Because then we're literally putting the story up on flashcards so that you can see it. And this is going to sound ridiculous, but we literally have like a blue star sticker that we stick on a clip that's really sad, and red stars on ones that are very funny. And so you want to make sure that you, in terms of a blue star, really sad clip, you don't want many of those, because those are really hard to write any joke off without it feeling incredibly glib. What you want is as many red star clips as you can. That's the challenge for the footage producers. So it's a hugely collaborative process. And at its best, it should be better than the sum of all of our parts.
And how much does your view of the topic change over the course of the story? I mean, does the process confirm, strengthen, your thinking, or does it challenge it?
Oh, it can definitely shift it. You can go, I mean, I guess one of the slightly dispiriting patterns you can find in researching these stories is some of the data that is most commonly passed around by activists can collapse. There is some real, as I'm sure you know, garbage data passed around where it feels like, well, you've inflated this by 15% and it really did not need to be. There's a perfectly usable stat that's slightly less than what you're saying, which you can actually stand on, rather than this one, which is just nothing. That can be pretty annoying when that's slightly less than what you're saying, which you can actually stand on, rather than this one, which is just nothing. That can be pretty annoying when foundational stats collapse under relatively minor scrutiny. But things are generally, with some of these systemic problems, worse than you thought when you start looking at them. It's relatively common that at some point in the story process that we've just talked about, I'll walk into Tim Carvell's office and we'll look at each other after we've just learned a certain part of a story and say, burn it down, burn everything down to the ground.
You feel rage.
Yeah, because things are so much worse than you thought they were, and you thought they were pretty bad. Then you have to work through that, right? Because nihilism is completely useless. That's the coward's way out. So you work through that, and I have found, generally, with these stories, that the light at the end of the tunnel, albeit that light might be smaller than you would like it to be ideally, is that there are activists making small incremental progress on the ground, and that progress is really, really important.
How do you not give in to the nihilism? Because you delve into these very disturbing, bleak, some would say almost dystopian topics. and
Just classic
still,
comedy show fodder.
Yeah, and I mean, you're still angry and going into, your colleague's office and feeling furious.
How would you not be though? Unless you're a sociopath. Yeah, I don't know how you wouldn't be. I mean, the thing that's exciting about the show is that we have these resources, right? In a time when expertise has been absolutely put through a sausage grinder. We are very, very fortunate to have researchers who have access to great experts in a field, whatever that field may be, from criminal justice to deep sea mining. They will talk to us to make sure that we get something right. And it is such a privilege to be able to find something interesting and then send a researcher away to talk to great experts in the field to get an answer. It's having a machine for your own curiosity that is like the internet, but it brings back reliable results.
Do you know what else it's like?
What?
Journalism.
Well, let me say, like with the journalism tag, it's a little tricky, right? I am not a journalist. I did not train as a journalist. We do have journalists working for our show. A lot of them.
I'm glad someone's hiring journalists.
Unfortunately, it might just be us. So yes, I am not a journalist, but they are, for sure.
But don't you think, like, saying that you're not a journalist or not acting as a journalist allows you to elide some of the accountability of journalism, right? Which is
that's interesting. I really hope that we don't elide that responsibility. I both don't think I'm a journalist because I really think I am not. I could send my researchers away for 6 weeks and I think they'll come back saying, yeah, you're not. But in terms of the responsibility of journalism, we do have intense fact checking because we want it to be right. I mean, again, our stories are, those big stories are aggregations of incredible journalism. So it cannot function without journalism. Now, we recheck it to make sure it's accurate or that it hasn't changed, but we're building this to make jokes. It's just we want the foundations to be solid or those jokes fall apart. Those jokes have no structural integrity if the facts underneath them are bullshit. So that's what's
it's
important.
funny because it's true, sort of thing.
Well, it's only funny if it's true.
Right.
Yeah. And so it has to be true for it to be funny.
But I guess the why is: are you trying to make the world a better place? Are you trying to? No, but I mean, really, what is the big driving force here? Because some people would say, I just want to make people laugh and entertain them. Some people would say, yeah, I want people to think about something and maybe have a nice conversation over dinner with their husband. You seem to have a much bigger aim here.
I will say, the most important thing to me and to lots of people at the show is to do this in service of writing really funny, weird jokes about interesting things. So that is our outcome. It's not necessarily to make the world a better place. I'm not sure that comedy can do that. To a certain extent, sometimes it's fiddling while Rome burns. But I think what we want is to get the best ingredients that we can to write comedy from. That's the really honest answer. It's the thing I love the most in the world. I love writing comedy so much. It's just, it feels like this is the best process through which we can write interesting, fun, surprising jokes.
It seems to have made you uncomfortable that I've accused you of trying to make the world a better place.
I guess the problem, I mean, this might be a hang-up of being British. British people took a real stab at, if not making the world a better place, making it a more British place, and it didn't go too well. So, yeah, you don't want me involved in that.
What are you on about?
Your segments now go on YouTube after they air on Sundays.
Yes.
But this season, for the first time, HBO is delaying putting the episodes on YouTube by 4 days.
Yes.
I assume this is to encourage people to subscribe
I assume that too, yes.
to Max, the streaming service.
Yeah.
I take that that's frustrating to you.
Yeah, it's huge, it's massively frustrating to me. I was not happy with it at all. I certainly can make the same assumption that you do, which is that they want to make sure that people watch it. I would prefer people watch the show in its entire form when it goes out. This is partly self-serving, not just that I would like my employer to be happy, but we do take a lot of effort to make sure that the show makes sense as a whole, so that if we're doing a really bleak main story, we like putting real dumb stuff around it. But when we did Death Penalty Drugs, the pentobarbital, pretty bleak story, we made sure that we had a story after that about a stock photo model that we managed to fly from Azerbaijan. I like the conflation of those two things. So I would much rather people watched the show all together, because that's how we make it. So I hope that I hope it works, because I worry about it. I worry that I guess it remains to be proven to me that this was necessary.
Are you worried about the method of distribution? I mean, we know that, cable TV, generally speaking, is
Sure. Changing
a lot, and
definitely,
YouTube is obviously exponentially growing, and it's a place where a lot of different types of people come to get their content. So you want everyone to see it in its full entirety, but is it also that it reaches just a different type of person?
Yeah, I think that's what I was. What I love about having the show on YouTube, or the A story, is that we can reach beyond HBO subscribers. I think that feels really important to me. I think it's a good advert for HBO. I think it reflected really well on them and still does, the fact that they release this main story. I really, really appreciate the fact that they do that. I would rather they did it straight after the show that we've always done it, but I'm very grateful that they are willing to still do it at all, because I do think it's a good advert, not just for our show, but for the network. Because we are very lucky to have a big staff, right? That staff costs money. And so we're lucky to have an employer that will pay the costs of our show, which is small by their standards, by Dragon standards, but, you know, not insignificant.
I mean, do you see your show in the same format that it is, in the same way that it is 10 years from now?
I mean, I hope so, if I'm still alive.
You look healthy.
Right.
What just say?
I'm going to have that, Checkers, and I don't think either of us are going to like the answer that comes back. You look healthy. You have to add some qualifying language to that for a 47-year-old man with 2 children who's been through a pandemic recently and a stressful job. Albeit that stressful job isn't that stressful by general standards. Yeah, I have no idea what the future is of television or of late night. There will be a future, but I don't know what it's going to look like yet. And I have an active interest, for sure, in knowing the answer to that.
Last Week Tonight was renewed for another 3 seasons last year.
Yes.
Meaning it will be on the air till at least 2026.
Yes.
What
Oh boy.
would
oh
make
boy.
you feel?
Oh boy, I
No,
didn't like the way
no.
you said the word what there.
Oh my God!
Do
Yeah.
you think you're doing? What do you have planned over the next 5 years? Because I'd take any dream trips right now.
Yes,
Visit
it
Taj
does.
Mahal. You should go. You should go now.
I do not think you should go now, but I am curious. What would make you feel done with the show?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've seen. I guess I worked with Jon Stewart for a long time. I saw him get exhausted, so I know what that looks like. I saw him reckoning with the fact, oh, I don't know if I can do this in another. I've done this in every possible way that I can do it. And he was right about that. I can't really do it any better. I've not hit that point yet. I still absolutely love making the show. I get excited, like to your point of like bouncing up and down in the chairs of when we feel like we're onto something with a story, or we've worked out something really dumb to do. It's so fun. Maybe I've made this sound very academic, the way that we make it, the show, but it's so fun. I can't believe that we get to do it. I can't believe that we get to ram stories down people's throats that they might not naturally want to hear, and that they will watch it. And I can't believe that we get to play with HBO's resources and do dumb things on fiscally irresponsible scales. I love it so much. So I guess my answer is that point might come. I don't feel like I'm there yet, because I still can't believe that we get to do this.
Why haven't you ever had a fill-in host?
Huh. You mean like Kimmel? Or like,
No,
or
just
like
like-
Letterman or that way?
Well, like, I mean,
I hadn't considered that. I think it's a little tricky, not because I'm indispensable, because I don't think that's true. I think it's more that because of the way that we make the show, I don't think that would make any sense, because there are these 6-week cycles. So you would need someone, if I'm talking myself out of a job here, but you'd need someone to come in for one of those cycles, and that's a lot to ask of them. Honestly, we have a stand-in who does like a technical rehearsal that we've used from the start. He's pretty good. We call him Hot John because he's pretty good looking as well. And sometimes you watch him do the rehearsal and think, oh shit, that's pretty good.
you have a stand-in called Hot John.
That's not his name, but it's what the staff call him. And I think I've really thinking about it now, I think I've participated in that joke without fully realizing that I'm the butt of it.
John Oliver, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll talk again.
Yes.
After the break, I called John Oliver back and asked him about why he can't help but laugh at the hard stuff.
Hey, Lulu.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Buenos dias. Where are you?
I'm in our office. So it should be quiet. It's before the dogs get here, so.
Okay, I want to ask you something about our last conversation where you couldn't remember which episode it was that got you bouncing in your chair. Do you remember now?
Oh, I had, yes, before then, I would say the thing that has been most rattling around my head since we talked is that I know that we spent a long time talking about the label of journalism, and I didn't want you to feel like I was dodging it there. I guess just to be completely clear, we really don't elide the responsibility of that term. The accuracy of our show is so important to us. We go to lengths that I think many would find absurd from the outside in terms of accuracy. We recheck reporting to check that it is still valid. When we show people in clips, we try and contact as many of them as we can to check that they felt their story was told accurately and whether there's any other context that we should know. We do so much, and the responsibility of that label is really important. It just doesn't apply to me. And I guess the thing that I wanted to get to the bottom of, because it seemed interesting to me, was because this comes up quite a lot, and this felt like it would be, this kind of conversation feels like it might be a good time to get to the bottom of it, is I was wondering why it's so interesting to you, or why getting to a fuller answer. Is it that you feel like I've dodged in the past? And how would you feel if I said yes to that I am a journalist? Because my sense is you'd feel, no, you're not, rightly.
I think the reason it comes up a lot is because there is a sense that you are a news source, but you don't have the constraints that journalists have, right? You can, for example, take a topic that is very complicated and difficult and put in a lot of jokes to make it arch or funny, to sort of move the audience in a particular direction. And so I think there is this sort of dissonance that happens when journalists like myself are engaging with this. We're curious about how you view yourself. I mean, I don't think it's not a knock. It's more just trying to understand how you view yourself and your show and where it sits in the ecosystem, right? That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that is where much of the show would be, I guess to that first comparison you made, would be more editorial, right? It's just that I guess when I recoiled at being described as an op-ed was not wanting the worst version of that to be applied to this show, not just someone deciding, I'm going to say my opinion, because it is not just that.
To get back to a point that I wanted to make, because I think this is useful to the discussion that we've been having, is do you remember which episode it was that got you bouncing in your chair?
I do, and it was an episode recently, because I remember the literal bounce, and we were working on an episode about the West Bank, and I think what I was so excited about was the challenges that were ahead of us and the material that we were gathering and the opportunity that we had. And it really felt to me, in working on that story, it felt like, oh, this is the point of having a show where you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. This is kind of using that incredible opportunity to do something hard.
I found this episode fascinating. I was in Jerusalem as a reporter for many, many years. This stuff is really hard.
Yeah.
That episode talks about the Israeli settlements.
Mm-hmm.
And you really tried to parse what is very complicated and very nuanced, and you packed a lot in. So what was the reception after it went out?
I'm sure some people liked it, some people loved it, and some people hated it.
Do you pay attention to that?
I like paying a little bit of attention in the wake of our stories, especially regarding how experts respond to it in stories in general. I know that people aren't always going to agree with the conclusions that we land on, but I do want experts to think that the information that we presented is accurate.
It raises this question for me about something you said when we first talked. Basically, that you ultimately see the show and the stories you focus on as a vehicle to write jokes.
Yeah.
And I can see that logic when you're doing a piece about corn or UFOs, for example. Both very funny.
And you don't see the logic applying to something that's more complicated.
You don't do a half an hour about one of the most contentious issues in the world because it's comedy gold. Do you?
Oh, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. I guess comedy is the way I handle the world. So it's
I messed up
the darkest
again.
moments of my life. I still find myself compelled to try and make jokes, either to take the weight off some of what's happening, or to sometimes to feel what's happening a bit more. I find people employing comedy at moments of tragedy incredibly meaningful. I know some might find it glib or offensive. To me, it is the absolute opposite of that when done well. I still think one of the best moments in late night comedy over the last decade was Jimmy Kimmel talking about his son Billy's heart surgery. It was incredibly generous to be so emotionally honest and raw. It was incredibly brave to be that honest, knowing that people were going to ask him how his son was every day for the rest of his life after that. And this is the most important thing to me, it was really funny. And the fact that he was telling jokes while choking through tears was the thing that really, really meant something to me. It was more sincere because he was communicating through jokes.
Explain that to me. It was more sincere because he was communicating through jokes.
Because it's I love comedy so much. It is, like I say, it's my favorite thing, just in general in the world. So I do not see a distinction between how could you joke about this. For me, it's more like, how could you not? How could you not tell jokes about a situation that is absolutely absurd? Darkly absurd, but absurd. Does that make sense? And that would apply to the West Bank too.
Do you think it also gives, I'm thinking of Jimmy Kimmel in particular, do you think it also gives people access to very uncomfortable emotions?
Probably, and for me, look, I'm British, right? So my ability to deal with my emotions is, and has been, limited at best. The very fact that I'm telling you, yeah, I find it better to laugh at things rather than, feel them sincerely as a human being says something. What I found so meaningful about Jimmy's thing was I had our first child's pregnancy was really difficult, and I couldn't talk about it in general. I certainly could not do anything as generous as decided to talk about it publicly so that the people who had also experienced situations like that could feel that their experiences were being reflected back at them. I didn't have the emotional ability or even the comedic abilities to do that. So that's why I was so in awe of what he was doing in the crucible of that pain. It's absolutely incredible as a comedian what he managed to do. And yet for me, the fact I was laughing along with the lump in my throat made it way more impactful for me.
Has being a parent exacerbated that burn it down feeling that you mentioned about some of the ways the world is messed up, or the opposite?
I do remember after the Brexit vote happened, looking at my baby son and thinking, oh, this is sad, your horizons have slightly contracted, because he would have been able to have a British passport, which would have been an EU passport, meaning that he could live or work anywhere in the EU, which for young people in Britain was a massively consequential thing to have access to. My little sister left college, went straight to France, started washing dishes in a bakery, ended up learning to bake. Now she's a pastry chef. Like the ability to move, having those borders opened, massively consequential. So I will say there was a selfish side of me watching that vote, looking down at him and thinking, oh, your world got smaller. That's very sad. But no, in general, my feeling of let's burn it down when we're at a point of researching a story where things seem utterly hopeless, and the history that we have of working through that despair, partly by seeing the incremental changes that are possible, that's probably pretty consistent. I don't think they've really changed my disgust with the political process and my hope for better.
Are you going to talk about that with your kids at the dinner table? Are you going to be that dad?
Oh, God. I mean, that's a really fair use of that, Dad. There.
I mean that actually in the best possible way.
How do you mean? Am I going to say to them things are unfair?
Just like sit and talk about the state of the world and have them be engaged in it. And
Yeah, I'm probably going to be that, Dad.
I mean, my husband's like that with our daughter, and she loves it some days and hates it others.
Yeah, of course. I think that feels like an utterly human response to that. But there's a time and a place for this, Dad. Can we please talk about something else now?
John Oliver, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Lulu. I appreciate it. Hello there. Welcome. If you are watching this, it is because you are under 35, and our main story this week was about homeowners associations. So we thought we'd make a special substitute story just for you, as you will never be able to.
So
I
you don't
love
have to wear
this.
headphones. Personally, I just don't like the nerdy, big cans on my head podcast look. So.
Best hidden object game for long flights. No Wi-Fi, no ads. Free and relaxing. Classic hidden object.
Синупред – немецкий фитопрепарат против синусита. Синупред экстракт – концентрированная форма с усиленным действием.
Well, this is from a while back, but I would assume you're sort of like, a favorite son back in the UK.
Oh, no.
There's been
Oh,
some...
no. Oh, no.
This is an article from the Times, big newspaper.
Big newspaper. Yeah, Murdoch owns, so he can go himself. Yeah. Yeah.
John Oliver, the British comedy failure who makes America laugh. Did you know this was coming?
I didn't know that headline was coming. I knew an article was coming because they said, like, would you like to do an interview for this? And I thought it'll be on the front page of like the culture supplement at the Times. I thought that'd be great. It'd be some nice surprise for my parents. And then I had a conversation with this journalist, like an hour and a half. Felt like, oh, this has gone quite well. I think we've kind of hit it off. I don't think I've said anything that's not going to look bad in print. So I was actually looking forward to it coming out. And then that was the headline. And you've got the British people are just absolute black belts at passive aggression. And that really feels like it's a compliment really wrapped in.
Did I lose you? Ci mergem a fare? Mergem a fare?